everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. In this video, we're going to talk about this future temple in Jerusalem, meaning the old Jerusalem. And this is something that we've talked about so many times on the channel. We've tried to figure out where is it going to be built, who's going to build it. And I have an entire playlist called The Third Temple. This one focuses on essentially what the Jews are trying to do. They're trying to themselves build the third temple. Of course, there's different opinions among them how it's going to happen. You have the Temple Institute that's they've made all the things necessary for the temple. Everything's ready to go. They just need the temple itself. Like they've created the menorah, and they've also done the Ark of the Covenant, and they've done all the instruments and stuff that would be used in the temple. But there's some of them that believe that it's going to come out of heaven. It's not going to be built by the Jews. It's going to come from heaven. Others believe that they will be the ones that build it. They pretty much all agree that it's supposed to be built on the Temple Mount, although there's different opinions as to where exactly. You would think that all of them would think that it would be right where the Dome of the Rock is, but that's not the case. There's a number of different theories, but they all generally agree that it's supposed to be on the Temple Mount. So, anyway, that's what this playlist mostly has to do with, and there's so much to it. I would really encourage you to watch this if you haven't already. I have 21 videos in it, and this will be the 22nd once I'm done with this video. And then we've also looked at the BYU Jerusalem Center, because I tend to think that this could be that temple, or that there may be multiple temples in Jerusalem, like just like there's going to be in New Jerusalem. In New Jerusalem, the plan is to have a 24 temple complex. All those temples have different purposes. They're not like the temples like what we have right now. There might be one or two of them where you actually do ordinance work, but the other ones have names. We've gone to the Joseph Smith papers to see what their names are and what their functions are and what they're supposed to do. And so it wouldn't surprise me if there'd be something similar in Jerusalem, in that the BYU Jerusalem Center would become like an administrative temple, or maybe the primary temple where Christ rules from whenever he's in Jerusalem. Um, and before you tell me anything about what BYU professors have said and such, they don't know. They don't know. They don't know how many temples there's going to be in Jerusalem. They don't know what the Lord's purposes are. The Lord can do whatever he wants. It commonly comes up that the agreement said that we wouldn't use it as a temple. I haven't been able to find that anywhere whatsoever. What has been agreed to is that it wouldn't be used for proselyting, and that's the primary concern, primarily from the Hasidic and Haredi Jews, which are like the ultra Orthodox. They don't want proselyting done, but I haven't seen anything that says that it can't be used for other purposes. And if you have something that says otherwise, send it my way, and then I'll do a video about it. But anyway, there's so many miracles that went into making the BYU Jerusalem Center a possibility that I don't think that it's just supposed to be a BYU campus. It's on Mount Scopus, which is part of the same mountain ridge as the Mount of Olives. It's just a little bit north, within a stone's throw, essentially, of places like the Garden of, Garden of Gethsemane. I mean, not really a stone's throw, but it's like really close. So I've been trying to figure out, is this going to be that temple that's prophesied? We've also discovered that, and some of you already knew this before I did, but there's Melchizedek's temple that's in the city of David. In fact, let's go there right now. City of David. This is something that was discovered within the last 10 years. Let me go to the map, and let's also do Melchizedek Temple, City of David. And if you've been to the temple, there's some things here that should probably strike you as kind of curious, specifically this room, specifically the floor, if this will ever come up. Okay. So this they recognize it as a temple, and they think that it was Melchizedek's temple. The reason why they think that is because there's an altar there. Um, this right here, like the type of altar that you would like kneel at. You see this? And then there's also a different altar that would be in the corner here. It's not there anymore, but it would be in the corner for burning sacrifices. Okay. So there is a temple there, Melchizedek's temple, and I've done a video about this already. Just do a search on my channel for Melchizedek's temple, and that's in the city of David, right here. The city of David is the original Jerusalem. It was very small at the time that David conquered it, and since that time, it's been expanded and enlarged. Right. So here's the Temple Mount where the first and second temples were the Solomon's temple, and then later the Temple of Zerubbabel, which was later renovated and by Herod. Right. And then just over here, where is it? I'm usually pretty good at finding it. Just right here is the BYU Jerusalem Center. And then right here is the Mount of Olives. So the proximity of the BYU Jerusalem Center to these other temples is really interesting in its proximity to the Mount of Olives, where Christ is going to set foot when he comes. So, um, these are all speculations, and speculation is okay. But what I'm more interested in is what the scriptures say, and then on top of that, how those scriptures are interpreted by prophets and apostles. So, check out these two playlists, the Third Temple, BYU Jerusalem Center. But now I'm starting to collect the quotes from prophets and apostles. The first of which is from Joseph Smith himself, April 6th, 1843, in History of the Church, Volume 5, page 337. He says, Judah must return, which they have. Jerusalem must be rebuilt, which it has. And the temple, which we don't know unless the BYU Jerusalem Center is supposed to be that temple, or at least the first of other temples. And water come out from under the temple, and the waters of the Dead Sea be healed, according to the book of Ezekiel. It will take some time to rebuild the walls of the city and the temple, and all this must be done before the Son of Man will make his appearance. Okay, so we just talked about the BYU Jerusalem Center. Who knows? But I don't think it's it's outside the realm of possibility. In regards to water coming out from under the temple and the waters of the Dead Sea being healed, I've done some really interesting videos about that. I got this information from Israel 365 News, where they've noted changes around the Dead Sea. Flowers that are starting to pop up in places that they haven't before. Fish that are being seen in sinkholes and in streams that feed the Dead Sea that haven't been seen there before. In fact, the first person to notice it was this girl right here, who I interviewed. Her name is Samantha Siegel, and she's kind of gotten a little bit popular among the different people and organizations that track these things, when prophecy is being fulfilled. So that's it. It seems like that's happening. There's a lot of water underneath the city of Jerusalem. In fact, I did another video where they discovered a body of water underneath the original Knesset building. Um, like when the Knesset was first formed, they were in this building, and they discovered water underneath it that they didn't know about before. So anyway, there's a lot of stuff happening with the Dead Sea right now as we speak. Okay, so here's the next quote. This is from Charles W. Penrose in an article called The Second Advent in the Millennial Star in 1859. And who is he? He ended up becoming first counselor in the first presidency. And here he is. Okay, he says, the Jews, still in unbelief that Jesus was the Christ, will separate themselves from among the Gentiles and gather to their fatherland. Events will be so controlled by the God of Israel that they shall possess the land again and build the temple in its former place. They will increase and multiply in numbers and in riches and practice the rites of the Mosaic law looking for the coming of Messiah to reign over them as king. So here, what he's saying is that the Jews will be the ones that build the temple. And not only that, but it's going to be in its former place. So that's what he says. Let's go ahead and move on. This is Joseph Fielding Smith, Doctrines of Salvation, Volume 2, page 369. Latter-day Temples Foretold. That temples and temple ordinances are essential to the Christian faith is well established in the Bible. Malachi predicted the coming of the Lord suddenly to his temple in the day of vengeance uh, in the latter times as a refiner and purifier. Ezekiel predicted the building of a temple in Jerusalem, which will be used for ordinance work after the gathering of Israel from their long dispersion and when they are cleansed from their transgressions. Now, at this point, I don't know what type of ordinance work he's referring to because you have the ordinances of the priesthood during the time of the law of Moses, namely sacrifices and also different things that they did in the temple. Um, I don't really know. If he means to say the ordinances that we do right now in the temple, um, that is possible. I mean, he says that's what's going to happen. He also talks about Ezekiel, and in the book of Ezekiel, he gives the dimensions of the future temple. And it's the type of temple that would resemble the first and second temples. Okay. So this is where it's kind of interesting. Again, I don't know if he's talking about the ordinance work of the law of Moses, but he could also be referring to the ordinances that we do today. I've talked about this before on the channel. If you go to the Temple Institute website, okay, they have this tour of the temple. You go to study tools, then go down to vessels, and then under that they have an illustrated tour of the holy temple. And we've talked about this before that there's different buildings, or sorry, not buildings. There's different rooms in the temple that you may not have known about, right? Like everybody is familiar with the court of the women. Everyone's familiar with the sanctuary or the holy place. That's where you would have had the incense table, the menorah, and then the table for the showbread. And then there's the veil, and then you go through the veil and you end up in the Holy of Holies where the Ark of the Covenant would have been, at least at the time of Solomon's temple. For the second temple, no. So everyone knows those rooms, but you may not have known that there's a series of rooms and hallways that go around the outside of this right here, the Kodesh and Kodesh Kodeshim, which is the sanctuary and the Holy of Holies. And they don't know what those rooms are for. I've researched it. I've read everything here on the Temple Institute website. They don't know what these were for. And furthermore, there was also a second floor that was empty as far as they know. There was a veil up here, but a big empty room essentially. And you got to it by this staircase right here. So like you'd come in the main entrance into the ulam, which is this kind of like hallway here. And then you would go through this door and then go to the right, and there'd be a stairway that would take you upstairs, and then you could enter in this upper floor. On the opposite side, on the south side of the temple, there was a similar, there wasn't a stairway, but there was like a hallway that would kind of correspond and be parallel to the staircase. And this was sealed off. And if I can't remember what they said, but I think they said that this was sealed off specifically for the Messiah. Only he was supposed to be going there. Anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is that it's unclear, you know, when it comes to like the ordinances that we do these days, like the initiatories and endowment, if those kind of things were taking place back there. But it's possible that they were at some point. Probably not when Christ was there, because at that point the temple had become a quote unquote den of thieves and corrupt. And it seems that the Mount of Transfiguration is where Peter, James, and John received their endowments and stuff like that. So it wasn't even done in the temple. But at some point, at some time, they could have been. Who knows? in the actual temple itself. So, and by the way, there's something really interesting about this layout right here, how you have this room up here uh, that's right above. It's like the same dimensions, like if you take away the different rooms, it's like you have one rectangular room on top of another, which actually corresponds with some of our modern day temples, specifically the early pioneer era temples. And I did a video about that right here, third temple surprise video, and interesting link to modern day temples. I would encourage you to watch that. Only 2,500 people have watched it, but like when you think about the Kirtland Temple or the Nauvoo Temple, you don't typically associate that with the ancient temples in Jerusalem, but they're a lot more similar than you think. And so I would encourage you to watch that video. I'll put it in the description below. Okay, so but going back to this, so he mentions Ezekiel, um, and then also ordinance work. And what type of ordinance work? I don't know. Okay, let's go to the next one. Doctrines of Salvation, Volume 3, page 498. He says, when Christ comes in fulfillment of this promise, there will be on earth two great cities made holy with holy sanctuaries or temples. One will be the city of Jerusalem in the land of Judah, which shall be rebuilt, and the other, the city of Zion, or the New Jerusalem, in the land of Joseph. All right, the next one. Okay, there's a lot of information here. This is Bruce R. McConkey, the Millennial Messiah, the Second Coming of the Son of Man, pages 278 to 280. And this is what he says. Okay. And thus ended temple work in Jerusalem in the Old Temple with its Mosaic ordinances, in the temple whose work, like the law of Moses, of which it was a symbol, was fulfilled. And thus was it to be in Jerusalem until the promised day when a new temple should arise, perhaps on the very site of the old one. Now, unlike Charles W. Penrose, he introduces some potential doubt or uncertainty as to whether it would, in fact, be on the Temple Mount, or at least on the very site of the old one. So that's an update, in which the gospel ordinances of the new kingdom shall be performed. So here, he's saying that in this new temple, you would have the ordinances of the new kingdom. Okay, so this new temple shall be the one of which Ezekiel spoke. And again, Ezekiel gave the dimensions and everything for the new temple, which would resemble the first two temples. So this is where it kind of gets confusing, because if we have a temple that looks like this, and if in fact these rooms were used for endowments or initiatories or whatever, then I guess that makes sense. And we do know that at least for a time that uh, burnt offerings, like actual animal sacrifices, will resume, according to Joseph Smith. But then later, Joseph Fielding Smith says that that will only be for a short time. But then sacrifices will resume, but in a different way, not with like animals anymore. I'll have to add that to my spreadsheet. I've already gone over that on the channel, but so I don't know. It's just like weird. So I would assume that burnt offerings will continue, but in addition to that, you would have the ordinances that we do today, and perhaps that's what these rooms are for. Possibly even this upper room. In fact, it was Cleon Skousen. He consulted with what I think was the original Temple Institute when they went by another name. And he was like, oh, there's supposed to be a second floor. And they're like, well, what's supposed to be up there? And Cleon Skousen said, well, when Messiah comes, he'll tell you what to do up there. But of course, Cleon Skousen would probably be referring to the ordinance work that we do today. So anyway, that's just something to think about. Okay, Bruce R. McConkey continues. This new temple shall be the one of which Ezekiel spoke. Quote, it will make a covenant of peace. End quote. with Jewish Israel when the return to the ancient fold, saith the Lord. Quote, it shall be an over... he keeps like going in and out of quotes. I'm not going to... Okay, I'm just going to read... Okay. It shall be an everlasting covenant with them, even the fullness of the everlasting gospel, which is the new and everlasting covenant. And I will place them and multiply them, and will set my sanctuary, my temple, in the midst of them forevermore. My tabernacle also shall be with them, yea, I will be their God, and they shall be my people. And the heathen shall know that I, the Lord, do sanctify Israel, when my sanctuary shall be in the midst of them forevermore. This is from Ezekiel chapter 37. Okay, continuing. This is the day of which Zechariah spoke. Thus saith the Lord, I am returned to Jerusalem with mercies. My house shall be built in it with the Lord of hosts. My cities through prosperity shall yet be spread abroad, and the Lord shall yet comfort Zion, and shall yet choose Jerusalem. And then shall the millennium be ushered in, for thus saith the Lord, I will bring forth my servant, the branch. I will remove the iniquity of that land in one day, the burning when every corruptible thing shall be consumed. In that day, saith the Lord of hosts, shall ye call every man his brother under the vine and under the fig tree. That was from Zechariah chapters 1 and 3. Okay, Bruce R. McConkey. Who shall build this temple? The Lord himself shall do it, by the hands of his servants the prophets. Behold, the man whose name is the branch, he shall build the temple of the Lord. And be it remembered, the branch is one of the messianic designations by which the promised Messiah is known. Even he shall build the temple of the Lord, and he shall bear the glory, and shall sit and rule upon his throne. And whence shall the workmen come to build the sanctuary? Quote, they that are afar off shall come and build the temple of the Lord. It's from Zechariah chapter 6. Okay, Bruce R. McConkey. Who are those who are afar off, who shall come to Jerusalem to build the house of the Lord? Surely they are the Jews who have been scattered afar. By the power and under the authorization. By what power? Okay. By what power and under whose authorization shall the work be done? There is only one place under the whole heavens where the keys of the temple are found. There is only one people who know how to. Okay, that's a typo there. There's only one people who know how to build temples and what to do in them when they are completed. That people is the Latter-day Saints. The temple in Jerusalem will not be built by Jews who have assembled there for political purposes as at present. It will not be built by people who know nothing whatever about the sealing ordinances and their application to the living and the dead. It will not be built by those who know nothing about Christ and his laws and the mysteries reserved for the saints. But it will be built by Jews who have come unto Christ, who once again are in the true fold of their ancient shepherd, and who have learned anew about temples because they know that Elijah did come, not to sit in a vacant chair at some Jewish feast of Passover, but to the Kirtland Temple on April 3rd, 1836, to Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery. The temple in Jerusalem will be built by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Quote, they that are afar off, end quote. They that come from an American Zion, they who have a temple in Salt Lake City, will come to Jerusalem to build another holy house in the Jerusalem portion of, quote, the mountains of the Lord's house, end quote, from D&C 133:13. Then, quote, many people in strong nations shall come to seek the Lord of hosts in Jerusalem and to pray before the Lord, end quote. Zechariah 8:22. Quote, and it shall be in that day that living waters shall go out from Jerusalem, and the Lord shall be king over all the earth, and in that day shall there be one Lord, and his name one. End quote. Zechariah 14. These are the waters of which the scripture saith, quote, they shall be healed. End quote. Ezekiel. Bruce R. McConkey. All of this brings us to that inspired statement of the prophet Joseph Smith relative to the temple in Jerusalem and the second coming. Quote, Judah must return, Jerusalem must be rebuilt, and the temple, and water come out from under the temple, and the waters of the Dead Sea be healed. It will take some time to rebuild the walls of the city and the temple, and all this must be done before the Son of Man will make his appearance. End quote. Whew. Okay, so Bruce R. McConkey. Okay, you'll remember that I've asked before, with Bruce R. McConkey, there's so many things that he says authoritatively, and there's a lot of people that are quick to say, well, that's just his opinion. And I'm not so sure about that, because in the book, there's a different part in the book where he, in fact, you know what? I have that saved. This is what he says. Okay, this is about speculation. This is on pages 413 to 414. He says, whatever the case may be with reference to these things, something apparently happened with reference to the rainbow in Noah's day, and something is certainly going to happen with reference to it in connection with the Lord's return. We are left to speculate relative to some of these matters, which is not at all bad as long as any expressed views are clearly identified for what they are. In fact, in our present state of spiritual enlightenment, the Lord deliberately leaves us to ponder and wonder about many things connected to his coming. In this way, our hearts are centered upon him so that we will qualify in due course to receive absolute and clear revelation on many things. So, he talks about the fact that it's okay to speculate as long as they are clearly identified as what they are, speculation. So does that make sense? So Bruce R. McConkey says, essentially, that when he is speculating, he will say it. But when he is not speculating, there won't be any need for him to say that because he's not speculating. So as he's talking about this temple in Jerusalem, it seems like he's saying a lot of this stuff pretty authoritatively. That he's not sure, but it could be perhaps on the very side of the old one, but it may not be. In that it's going to be the church, it's going to be under the authority of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that it's built, and that it's not going to be the Jews that are currently there. So, according to what he's saying, it would seem that if he was here with us today, he would be like, no, it's not going to be the Temple Institute that builds the temple, right? And then furthermore, he says that the ordinances that we do today, sealings, the endowment, are going to take place in that temple. And yeah. So, I mean, now think about this. Do this little mental exercise. Let's go to the map. Okay. Let's take a look at the Dome of the Rock. Now, if the church was somehow able to build a temple right here, don't you think everybody would lose their minds? Don't you think that it would take quite the miracle for that to happen? I'm not going to put limits on God. I mean, for all I know, maybe there is some kind of way that the church would end up building a temple right here. Or, like Bruce R. McConkey said, perhaps it would not be there. Perhaps it would be in another place. Because unlike the Jews, they believe that it has to be in the very exact same spot, right? And they take that from Scripture because for them, everything is contained in the Old Testament exactly how it should be, and nothing deviates. And so, since God has not spoken since that time, since he designated this spot to be the place of the temple, then it must always remain so. But we are not confined to that thinking because we know that there's further revelation, that more revelation has come since the Old Testament. And hence, we have the New Testament, and we have the Doctrine and Covenants, and we have modern day prophets and apostles. So, I don't know why it couldn't be that some other place would be selected, and why it couldn't be the BYU Jerusalem Center. Now, the only thing that would go against this idea is the measurements given in the book of Ezekiel, unless, like I said, there will be a future temple built on the Temple Mount, but that there will be multiple temples in this area, the first of which may be the BYU Jerusalem Center as an administrative temple. Now, one interesting thing about the BYU Jerusalem Center, if you go to my playlist, is we've looked at this portion of it right here, like this top portion. You see all these like squares right here. Now, I realize that to the west side, you have all like the dorms and stuff like that. You have like this little outside court right here, and I think the building kind of extends over here to the east. But if you just focus on this section right here where you see all these squares, and you see this like peculiar kind of like blocky top thing right here, I've done a video where I've overlaid uh, the second temple, well, both Solomon's temple and the second temple, because they pretty much have the same dimensions. And it fits very nicely over the BYU Jerusalem Center if you do like an overlay. Not only that, but the Holy of Holies and the Holy Place, they go over very neatly over this blocky top. Now, it's not so much the absolute measurement, meaning how wide it is in feet or meters or how long it is, so much as it is the relative proportions, meaning if you were to shrink down the old temples to the size of the BYU Jerusalem Center, that proportionally it's correct. So if you want to see more about that, watch these videos and I will put them in the description below, or just go to the playlist. But it's the video called How Does the BYU Jerusalem Center Compare to Ancient Temples? And that's only had 176 views. And then how does the layout of the BYU Jerusalem Center compare to Ancient Temples, which only has 900 views? So maybe I'll have to do a future video to show that again, but I would just encourage you to watch these two videos. Um, Also, the line that runs through the BYU Jerusalem Center, you can draw a line through here, and it ends up going through Independence, Missouri, specifically the Temple Lot area. Now, I know that you can like kind of move the line around. You know, I wasn't able to do it to absolute perfection, but if you take any number of lines that you can draw through the center, you see how my mouse is going like this? It's going through the center. You could draw any number of lines, but it's going to be limited, meaning that like if you kind of like try and move the lines around a little bit, like say that you have a line that kind of goes like this, it's a little bit slanted, or you do another one that kind of goes that way, there's a range, okay? But within that limited range lies Independence, Missouri. And I tried my best to do like a perfect line using Google Earth that goes through the center right here, like just like right down the middle. And it goes through the Temple Lot in Jackson County, Missouri. I've done a video about that. It's this video right here. So um, there's a lot of interesting things when it comes to the BYU Jerusalem Center. And in fact, I want to share this right here. I put this on the community tab recently and also on the Facebook and Instagram my Facebook and Instagram accounts for Christian Homestead. But this is something that Elder Jeffrey R. Holland said about the BYU Jerusalem Center. He says, I don't know what it will mean a generation after we're gone or what future purposes the Lord will have for it, but I hope students from all over the world can be blessed by it. My testimony, look at this, my testimony to you is that the Lord wanted that center to be built and has it there for great purposes that we now see only dimly. So, kind of a cryptic statement, but like I've said before, Jeffrey R. Holland likes to drop hints. I've seen him do it time and time again. And yeah, I don't think that we're looking at simply a educational center or like a college campus so much as a future temple, just like how the Independence Visitor Center, we know for a fact, is not just a visitor center. It was built to become part of the 24 temple complex. The dimensions were taken from not the Joseph Smith papers, but you can find it in the Joseph Smith papers. The revealed dimensions of how the temple was supposed to measure, length and width and height. Okay, this is a future temple, and it's my belief that this is a future temple. And I just want to bring something else up that's interesting. Is So what we have coming up, I need to update more because I think there's more temples on here that have scheduled dedication dates that I haven't updated on my second coming timeline. But what's interesting is that we have 3 temples that are going to be dedicated on the same day, on the 17th of September. 17 is a number that comes up time and time and time again with President Nelson specifically. He's the 17th president of the church. The April 2022 General Conference, there were all these 17s that were in that. He announced 17 temples to complete 100 temples total that he by himself has announced. Well, anyway, this year, there's a bunch of other 17s. I'm not going to go through the whole list. You'll have to go back and watch my other videos. Anyway, we have 3 temples being dedicated on the 17th of September. And one of them is the Brazil temple. Now, one thing you may want to look at and think about, like I've said, I've done a number of videos about the architecture of the BYU Jerusalem Center. Look at the arcade, like this exterior arcade, which is a series of arches. It's called the arcade. Look at this, and then look at, oops, wrong one. And then look at this, which is a little bit interesting, don't you think? That you have these 2 potentially future temples that have this architectural feature in common, an exterior arcade. Look at this, and look at this, and then look at one of these temples, actual temples, that is about to be dedicated on the 17th of September. Doesn't it look just a little bit similar? Just a little bit. Especially with the BYU Jerusalem Center, you have like this top block that has like the one arch. If you're looking at just one side, has one arch. Okay, look at this. Oh, the Brasilia temple has the same thing. And by the way, the Brazil temple, this is the capital of Brazil. So you have the capital of Brazil, you have the capital of Israel, and then you have the future capital of the land of Zion, Independence, Missouri. Capital, 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 and then these 2 very similar. 1 arch on top, 3 arches on the second tier down, just like this one. If you were to look at it from the side, it'd have 1, 2, 3 arches. And then on the bottom, for this one, you have 7 arches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. On the BYU Jerusalem Center, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And you're like, well, 11. But if you think about the columns, it's actually 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 columns or pillars, whatever. Okay. Very interesting, the numbers going on with this and the visual similarity between this potentially future temple and this actual temple. And then again, this future temple. That's a matter of fact. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Just like the BYU Jerusalem Center has the same number of arches and columns. It's the same number. They correspond. They're parallel. They copy each other. And they were built around the same time. But now I'm starting to get into all the stuff that I've already done about this. I'm serious. Watch this video or go through this playlist. I know it's a lot, but it's hard to cram it all into just one video. Okay? So what do we know about the BYU Jerusalem Center? We're not supposed to use it for proselyting. That's it. And it definitely can become a temple at any given time. One day during one conference, they could be like, you know what? Okay, so now is the time to turn the visitor center in Independence, Missouri into a temple and the BYU Jerusalem Center into a temple. And it's not going to be for regular worship. These are going to be special temples. They are prepared at this point. They're going to be dedicated and prepared for the second coming. That could happen anytime. 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 So I'm going to keep looking. I'm going to keep searching to see what other statements have been made about the future Jerusalem temple. Also, the BYU Jerusalem Center. I'm going to try and get that story about the two missionaries that died back in I think it was the early 1900s, that gave the church the legal ability to build the BYU Jerusalem Center. Again, I don't think that missionaries died just so that BYU students could go and have hands-on experience in the Holy Land. I think it's so that this could become a future temple. At this point, I feel like I'm just kind of rambling. I don't think I have anything else. I'm going to have to update this. I think that there's a few other temples that now have dedication dates. But the one that's coming up the soonest is going to be the Richmond, Virginia temple. In fact, in just 2 days, actually. Wait, what? Okay, hold on. That's going to be on a Sunday. So, King Charles III is being coronated tomorrow on the 6th. And then the next day is the 7th. So that's 1/7. And it's a Sunday. And the Richmond, Virginia temple is going to be the 177th temple of the church. That's a lot of sevens. And it's interesting that would happen the day after the coronation, just like that close proximity. And the coronation being on the 6th, 6 is that's the number of man. And then the next day you have this temple that's going to have all these different sevens that are part of it. That is super interesting. And remember, Richmond, Virginia, that's an important city in the United States historically, because that would have become the capital of with the Civil War. If the other side had won, that would have been their capital, and it's really close to Washington, D.C. We have the temple in Washington, D.C. But now we're going to have one here in Richmond, Virginia, just a little bit south in what would have been the capital, had the other side won and broken away. So it's just interesting stuff, interesting little details, and I promise you, this is my opinion, but I promise that they are not. It's not just coincidence, and it's not insignificant. I don't think it's insignificant that we have these three that are going to be dedicated on the 17th of September. Weird stuff. Weird stuff. And what's interesting, I don't know. There's probably something to Brazil. I feel like Brazil's always been a interesting place. It's always stood out to me as far as like the church goes. Um, it is here. I think Mexico is still ahead of Brazil in terms of church membership. Let's see. List of, let's see. LDS membership statistics by country. I think it's something like that. Hopefully this is the one that you can sort. I think it is. Yeah, okay, members. So the United States is in first place with 6.7 million. And then next comes Mexico. And then right behind that is Brazil. Brazil is a very important country to the church. And I know that this temple was built to, just like all temples, to reflect the architecture and culture of the surrounding area. But I can't help but to think again that there's a reason why this looks like this, and this looks like this, and this looks like this. There's no way that that's not related, especially these two. I mean, seriously. And that this is the capital of Brazil. Whatever, man. Whatever. Say what you will. In my mind, these are all connected, and it's not arbitrary. So, anyway, but you have this upcoming Brasilia temple that's going to be dedicated on the 17th. And then a month after that, you have this. Wait, why did I put Brazil right here? Natal, Brazil. Because that is that. Okay. October 2023 eclipse. Let's look at that path of totality again. It's going to go through Central America, Mexico, Belize, Honduras, Nicaragua, it's going to nick Costa Rica, Panama, Colombia, and then it's going to go through Brazil. It's going to go right through Brazil. This is a month after that temple is going to be dedicated. And where is Brasilia exactly? Brasilia, Brazil. Let's go to the map. Just eyeballing it. The eclipse is not going to go through there, it doesn't look like, but it's going to relatively come close. Anyway, I don't know. I don't know what to think about that. What else did we got? So on that day, we got Brasilia, and then Arkansas, and Washington. Let's look at this again. It's not going to go through Washington. It's not going to go through Arkansas either. But again, relatively, it's kind of close. I don't know. Okay, anyway. All right, that's going to be it for this one. So some things to think about. If you have any additional quotes or anything like that in regards to the BYU Jerusalem Center or the future Jerusalem Temple, I would appreciate it if you would send that my way. But send it to me in an email. Don't put it in the comments. It's easier if you send it by email. And then make sure to leave the source. If it doesn't have a source, if I can't verify it, then it's not really, it doesn't really work for me. I got to have a source. It's got to be authoritative. I got to be able to verify it. Okay, that's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.